being a parent to me kind of makes this a little bit more clear, a little bit more vivid. And striving for growth is something that is kind of built within us.
Mhm.
But I've grown to realize like if that's like your number one thing all the time, then it can actually really take away from like you spending time with your kids, which is also time, which is super valuable that you will never get back, even if you were trying to, go to 100 million as quickly as you could. Like it's just you gotta balance it. Everything.
Yeah.
You never want one thing to really control or rule your life, other than from I'd say prioritizing that time with your kids
Yeah.
and life, right? So
Well, I mean, that's really the whole point of the show is like, we're talking business, like, 100 million, like we're putting like dollar signs, we're having metrics. Those things are important, but there's also like, how have you invested into your family, the time element. And those KPIs look different. I mean, for everybody, you could
yeah.
be, goodness, my daughter's 3 now, and like we're still getting up in the middle of the night because she's screaming or something. And I'm, like she puts her hand out of the, like she has a crib and like I put my finger up there and she's, kind of holds the finger until she falls asleep. The floor's hard, there's a carpet. We probably should have just gotten a cot at this point or, like a foam mattress, but there's like a little square pillow that I'm just like
Yeah, yeah, dude.
so like, is
That's
there a KPI on that? Like, no.
but I feel like, and I think too, like those are the little things that will just pay off so much
Yeah,
in the long run.
yeah,
You've got a
no,
memory of holding your finger out with her, like she's gonna be 10 one day. She's not gonna
yeah,
need that. And you're gonna
yeah.
think back to that moment.
Are you a hardworking dad, juggling family responsibilities while dreaming of building wealth through real estate? Welcome to the Invested Fathers Podcast, where we explore how to balance investing and fatherhood. I'm your host, Kenny Johnson, founder of East West Capital. Over the past 5 years, I've been buying real estate to free up my time and secure my family's future. Now I'm here to help you do the same. Join me as we navigate the real estate world together, building wealth and strengthening our families. As my grandma always said, East West, home's best.
I love your son's name is Moses. I didn't know that. I'm a house music producer and DJ. I guess you could say part-time. And my
Yes,
my stage name is General Moses. So,
General Moses. Okay, and
yeah.
tell us how you got that.
Man. I was doing some streaming back in like the COVID days when crypto and NFTs were popping off. I had a friend who he's been into crypto way more than me throughout the years,
Yeah.
and they were scaling up their platform. So I was like, okay, it's a perfect way to like learn and like leverage what I'm good at. And so as I got more prominent in the Twitch streaming space, I'm like, all right, I've always kind of felt tied to the story of Moses. I love that he was someone who he didn't come to save the world, he came to save his people, you know? And I was just like, I love that vibe.
Mhm.
And oh, and when I was doing the stream, the name of the show is called The Shift. And so after a while, the viewers they started calling it the Shift Army. And I'm like, okay,
Mm.
well, if I'm leading this army of people talking about NFTs and I like Moses, and go General
General
Moses.
Moses.
There you go.
Beautiful dude. Yeah, he's a Mario lover. He's loving animals right now. Your kids are young, but man, like Wildcrats and all of the books of the life, like
I don't know what
National
that is
Geo.
yet.
Oh, dude, you will know.
Wild
You
Kratts.
you will know, my friend. It's like like an ETV. These brothers. It's
Oh,
it's it's like
seen
a
it.
cartoon thing, but it's educational. So there's that. That's a win. But yeah, you'll learn.
Oh, I'm a PBS. I'm a PBS kids
Yeah,
guy too. So there we go.
yeah, dude. Adam Carswell. What's up, buddy?
Kenny Johnson. Great to be here, man. I've been looking forward to this one for a while.
I have been so excited to see your name on my list of guests on the show. Adam has two under two, I believe. Is that right?
That is correct. We're recording this late July, early August 2024. Got a birthday in October, and then
Nice.
my daughter was born 2 days before my birthday.
Hmm.
She's March 16th, and so
Okay.
she's the little one, and then Micah
Yes.
is the older one who will be two soon.
Okay, dude. Adam, we've had a few conversations. I know you like Mario.
A huge
Um,
fan.
a
I can't,
huge fan
and
of
man, I'm so close to Micah being able to understand how a Nintendo controller works. So, yes.
No, I know you've been instrumental in the mastermind group that I'm in with Raise Masters. You were my like entryway into that group before. It's like, who is this guy? I've read a book. I'm maybe on a webinar, but I feel like when you can have a human connection, talk with you, sort of see like, who are you, Kenny, and let's talk. It makes the world difference. And that's basically my whole thing in life is connecting in relationships. So thank you so much for being on the show today. Let's just start by going into a little bit of who you are. Give us a little bit about your business. What are you up to and how's it going?
Absolutely. Um, so in 1 minute, I'll try and do the life story, and then I know we'll dive in here. So born and raised Cleveland, Ohio, went to college in Western Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh area. Played basketball, ran track and field for 4 years, did pretty well with both. Actually, we were just looking at it. So 3 months before I met you, Kenny, I got inducted into the Hall of Fame at my alma mater. That was pretty cool.
Very cool.
Played. Oh, it was one of those moments. And actually, we're talking about parents today. I'll never forget when I was kind of giving my Hall of Fame speech, looking out and seeing my dad, and he was tearing up, and I almost lost it in front of the
Yeah,
people I was
dude.
speaking to.
Wait, and
And my
Hall of
dad is
Fame, does that mean like for track and field and basketball, or what are the
uh
criteria for that?
I gotta be real with you. It's mainly for track and field. I did
Okay.
play and start all 4 years of basketball, but like to be honest, we were never really that good. Thankfully, once I moved to Belize, I figured out what it was like to be on a dominant winning team, and that was awesome. That really moving to Belize showed me the power of being on a team that expects to win. But
Mm,
as I say that, I got to be careful because my track and field team, we definitely expected to win throughout college. We won 3 titles. We had never won one before. And then my sophomore, junior, and senior year, we won the conference. I broke maybe 6 records along the way, 6 gold medals in all the conference championships. So it was like, I'm not
let's go.
at all trying to toot my own horn. It's just
No,
like
it's
that.
great.
That was why I was standing in the Hall of Fame thing
No,
was because.
that's awesome. Yeah, and
But
track and field is a whole nother level of mental discipline. So, dude, huge props. Sorry,
man,
continue.
and here we go. I said I was going to give you the life story in a minute, and we're
Dude,
we're
I
going
love
to
it.
go
Just
here.
take your time.
I remember comparatively getting ready for a basketball game versus getting ready for a track meet. There was so much more stress when it came to track because that's a style of competition where if you win or you lose, it's all on you.
Mm,
You don't have 4 to 10 other people to kind of share the win or share the loss with. If you win in track or lose, it's because of something that you specifically did. And so I ran the 400, 4x1, 4x4, 200. Loved them all. Honestly, I like the 200 and the 4x1 more because the 400 is, that's one time around the track. It's killer. But of course, that was the one that I was the best at, I'm like, all right. But yeah, man, just I'll never forget if I knew I was going to be running a 400 like a week before the race, I would sometimes have a hard time going to sleep because I would just be thinking about I would put like this immense amount of pressure on myself of what would happen if I didn't win, which I know is kind of like it's
mm,
crazy to think, but I've heard some athletes say this before. It's like the fear of losing is what actually drives many of them to win. Um, but man, it was so high stress. So I'm cool now that I don't have to like run a 400 every week, but
you're good.
yeah, it teaches you a lot about life. So getting back to what we're talking about, I mean, basketball still, I would say, was like my ticket to really getting out and seeing the world. And for a moment there, becoming an NCAA coach was like my dream. There's a guy named Shaka Smart who was the head coach of VCU for a while. He took VCU to the Final Four in 2011. And that was crazy because, like, over the past decade, anyone who pays attention to March Madness, there's been all kinds of upsets and like a 16 seed beats a 1 seed, and everyone's like, oh my gosh. But man, back in like 2011, it was always like a top 8 seed would make it to the Final Four until VCU comes around. They were like a 12 or a 13 seed. They make it to the Final Four. And now everyone knows who this guy named Shaka Smart is. And he was like 32 coaching this team. Um, so I got a connection through someone my dad used to play basketball for to go learn within the VCU community how to become a college basketball coach. Took what I learned there, took it with me to Belize. I coached collegiately in Belize. We did very well. I played semi-professional there, did very well. But I realized, and I was getting my master's while I was there too. Graduated, got my MBA, which is cool to just be able to say that I did that. But like, I realized, man, you know what? I like basketball, but I don't love it the way a lot of people that I know I'm learning from right now do. I like to travel. I don't like basketball. I don't love it this much. Like I want to do something else. So went back to America. I
How
was
old
like, I
were
can't go back to. I
how old were you at that point?
was 23. It's
Okay.
crazy.
Wow.
Decade,
Shoot, dude, you are a
decade ago now.
baby at that point. Okay, continue.
Yeah. Uh, moved back to Cleveland. I knew as soon as I got back to Cleveland, I was like, man, I was just in Belize for 2 years. On paper, that looks to me at that time was like, it looks so lame if I just come back to Cleveland. Like I got to go somewhere else. I can't just go to Belize and then come back to Cleveland. So ended up just applying for a bunch of jobs. Someone who I went to college with was a recruiter for Sherwin-Williams, the paint company in the
Mhm.
Washington D.C. area. So I got to talking with her. That got me a gig out in Washington D.C. where I managed stores for Sherwin-Williams for 2 years, and that was cool to just learn how a Fortune 500 company teaches you like the fundamentals of business.
Yeah.
And then I realized like, hey, you know what? Selling paint is cool, but especially living in DC, there's so many government related people there that if someone walks into your paint store, they don't mean to, but they just kind of look down on you. And I'm like, man, I want a job where like people look up to me or something.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
And I also saw like kind of the VP and the people higher up from me, and like they were getting paid good money. Paint they
Yeah.
mark the margins up a lot on paint for everyone out there. If you don't know that, it's
Oh
not a
yeah.
bad it's not a bad gig.
Oh. And
But
for those
I was like,
painting as well, the product and then the labor is like, but yes, 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 indeed.
exactly. So, but I just realized the people who I wanted to be like one day, even within that company, they were still working like 70-hour weeks, and they're getting paid more, but it's like when do they have the time to like enjoy what they're working for? So had a friend recommend Rich Dad Poor Dad to me, like many of us probably. Read that twice. And I'm like, okay, well, I knew I was either going to go into tech or to real estate because those seem like the two most guaranteed ways to get rich. So I'm going to go with one of them. And I chose real estate, became a realtor with Remax Distinctive in McLean, Virginia. Did that for 2 years. And then I met Hunter somewhere in that mix. Worked part time with Hunter Thompson, who, if you're on watching on video right now, you could see he's all over this screen behind me. He had raised about 25 to 30 million dollars at the time, and I was like, dude, I want to just like learn from you and work with you. Because I found him on a podcast where he was actually talking about his political philosophy, which is what drew me in. Because Hunter's what we would call an anarcho-capitalist. So basically, no faith in the government whatsoever, all faith in you taking life into your own hands. That's how I would explain it.
Yeah.
I was like, dude, I like this guy. I didn't know there's people like him in commercial real
Yeah.
estate.
Yeah.
So one thing led to another. Fast forward like 2 years, we launched Raise Masters, number one mastermind for elite capital raisers. I met you shortly after that, Kenny, and that's kind of my business and life journey. And then within the past 2 years, I've had two beautiful babies with my wife, who I got married to 4 years ago.
Thank you for sharing all that. I'm really piqued in my curiosity right now in understanding how you're wired. It was really cool how you talked about, school, MBA, Hall of Fame, Belize, and everything was 2 years. You didn't just try it for like 3, 6 months and then move on. You were kind of like, let me learn this, let me understand this. And it seems like each position you took, even from like the track and field, like you were growing on top of these like pillars. Like you were just building this foundation of like, what do I like? What are my gifts? What do I need to learn from this job? And then you pivoted or shifted or upgraded. So I read a book called Rocket Fuel. Have you read that one?
I have not, but I know of it, and I know kind of like the theories behind it.
Yeah. I mean, more or less, you need like a visioneer and an integrator, and together they can like just explode. You can, go to the stars. But oftentimes, one person tries to be both, and that person never goes anywhere because it's almost impossible. Would you consider yourself more visioneer or integrator? I'm curious on that thought.
Man, that's a really good question. Probably more of a visioneer. As you know, I make house music. I have my own podcast. Like I do these other creative, fun things on the side to keep life interesting, and that's where
Yes.
that I feel like that really shines.
Yeah. No, you're like all star in my mind in regards to like, at least in Raise Masters, it's not like, Adam Carswell, look at all the things that you're doing, but like, I just see your hand like in everything. Like there's a call, like you're in the wings, like running this, and there's like a conference, like I just, or I'm talking to another coach and it's like, oh, Adam and I are doing this, or just seems like you are integrating so many things through that. And to me, that is like the rare person, like someone willing to just like get things done while, everyone has an idea, you know, everyone would probably say they're a visioneer to some degree, but they're like, there are things will just fall flat unless you have, people to get stuff done. So you have, and again, going back to just the track and field, like getting stuff done, putting the time in and putting the hard work in is just such a rare quality that I have just huge respect for. So I'm really now we're gonna pivot this to like dad stuff.
Thank you very
Yes,
much, by the way. I,
yes.
I really
Oh,
appreciate it.
yeah, man. Before we get into what you're doing now as a dad, you obviously are highly motivated. Your dad's at the Hall of Fame, tearing up while you're holding tears back yourself. Seems like there was a good relationship there. What was it like growing up in your household and specifically like with your dad?
Yeah, I'm so lucky, so blessed to have the dad that I do. Actually, not even realizing it, I just was on the phone with him right before this call, and I wasn't even thinking about that. We had like a fatherhood podcast coming up, but my dad and my mom, they've been married now for I don't know 30, 34, 35 years or something like that, which is another just huge reward to me that I did nothing to earn. So yeah, I mean, in many ways, I really kind of feel like I hit the lottery, and it is what it is. It's all about like just kind of making the most of the situation that you're given in life. And man, my dad's he's just always been there, always someone. My mom's the mom that like will let her phone die and she'll lose it and she'll break it and like whatever. Everyone knows like if you're in an emergency in my family, just call Papa, call my dad. And if he doesn't pick up right away, he will get back to you. And that's like a cool dynamic to have between them too, right? Because obviously our mom is obsessed with all of us
Mm,
Carswells. There's six of us all together, four
okay.
boys, two girls. But yeah, I think that my dad, he always set a really strong example for us. One, I would say from a faith-based perspective, depending on where you're at, I'll just say kind of on the religious spectrum, if you will. Some people, like growing up, some people definitely would have thought that like I grew up in like a strict Christian household. However, when we go to church, all of a sudden we're the kids that are like allowed to watch Pokemon while other kids can't. So it's like an interesting dynamic between the two. But yeah, through it all, my parents only had the best intentions. They did raise us with a lot of Jesus, which I'm grateful for over the years. I feel like I've learned that there's a lot of good out there besides just one religion. And I think that's it is what it is. But to get back to my dad, like that's how we were raised. And there's a lot of good ethics and morals that come with that. And he set a phenomenal example for us, and he still does. And I do think that he has always taught us to think for ourselves. And what I mean by that is like, for example, and I shared a brief is early on this call. But politically, my dad is someone who every 4 years, and here we are, we're in the middle of another hype session. I've observed him truly like take a look at the cold hard facts and then make a decision whether it's left or right. And I love that because the narrative here in most of North America is if you have any melanin in your skin, you got to vote this one way.
Mm,
That's kind of how it's pushed to everyone through the screens that we look at. And so to see growing up that my dad has always made his decisions based on critical thinking, that's one of the biggest gifts he's given us is just to think for yourself and let nothing own you, let nothing control you. So
awesome.
that's my
Awesome.
Carswell. And he's a baller. He's good at basketball and music and all that stuff.
No, I always love asking that question. And what I've learned through this podcast, even just through the few episodes we've had, is that really makes up it starts like I connect the dots on how you grew up and how the dad and how the family sort of operated. It just, oh, that's why you're so motivated, or that's why you love this thing.
My parents-in-law have also been together for over 30 years. Just such a testimony, and it shows how like that's a big piece of I think what brought my wife and I together too is subliminally
Mm,
knowing that about each other.
mhm,
The
mhm.
expectation is set,
Yeah.
you know.
and you didn't do anything to earn it. And people out there may not have that, and it doesn't mean they're messed up. It just means they had probably a harder journey to get to where they are today. And
Mhm.
we can't control the families we were born into, obviously, and how we were treated, but we can control how we act and how we parent and father. So I'm excited now to kind of dig into like, so you're a dad of two. Kids aren't quite running track just yet,
One's
but
trying to run it everywhere.
tell me a little bit about what changed in your life when the kids came. Tell me a little bit about your experience about, day one, your dad.
Some could argue that when you become a parent, especially a parent of a newborn, you might lose a little bit of focus because you're sleep deprived, right? But the focus that you get when you do have that time to get things done is, from my perspective, totally elevated to a new level. And you might not even realize that initially, but as time goes by, at least for me, that's what I've realized, because I'm sure you could probably relate to this a little bit too. I look back to before I had kids or even before I was married, and I think to myself, even though we were both probably, doing a lot, I was like, man, what was I even doing with all that free time back then? Because if I had that now, I would do blah blah blah, right? So, um, but I think that's a little bit of not negative, but like the wrong way to look at it. The way to look at it is what it is. Once you have kids, Kenny, on the weekends, for example, if there's like a side hustle or a side project or whatever, Micah takes his nap from 1 to maybe 3 p.m. That's time to check in with my wife. Hey, is it cool if I get this done at this time?
Mhm.
Because we got to have our time together too, right?
Oh
And
yeah.
like you make sure you get that thing done. So that's one huge takeaway I would say, is just more focus on the when you do have that spare time on really deciding what you want to do with it.
Well, it's time, right? And I even last night in bed, I'm laying there and I'm just like, I feel like everyone needs to preach themselves daily how important time is. Like it's never a like, oh yeah, I've already heard that. Like I already know time's important. It's like, no, like it's important. And having kids, I feel like just makes it that much more like for me, the turning 30 was the lightning bolt moment of just like, what am I doing with my time, my life? Like I cannot spend the next 10 years doing what I did the last 10 years because I don't even know what I did the last 10 years. I mean, I know what I did in regards to working hard, but now you have a person who you're investing into, and you can pretty much like we talked about KPIs and like how hard, you're putting how much money have you raised and how big is your business? And like you can kind of get metrics there. But as a dad, right, it's different. What have you seen? You mentioned like I love that you said, asking your wife for permission to like, do this thing or making sure she's okay first. That's also huge for me. And that's been something that I continue to I don't know if it's failing in, but I blur the line of should I be working in the business right now or should I help my wife with this right now? And I'm naturally going to help my wife. I'm a servant, want to make sure everyone's okay in the room before I, work on stuff. But like, I'm also going to make sure I'm providing. So since you've had kids, has that been something that's been, I don't know, hard in regards to like time management?
I'll never forget when my wife and I went to, expecting parents classes for Micah, for our oldest. Um the advisor or the person teaching the course was like, "Hey, I know a lot of you guys here have cherished and maybe loved your date nights, or whatever you want to call them, your time together." They're like, "Once you have kids, especially over the next like 5 years, you want to think of them more as like date moments, because it's going to be really hard if you try to maintain whatever you're doing now
Mhm.
as date nights." And so for us, and this is, it's always cool when we hit this kind of groove. My wife and I feel like we haven't really hit this kind of groove with one or two kids until the past 3 months. And where I'm going with this is we recently started watching the show Survivor, which have you ever watched
Yes.
Survivor? Yeah.
Yes, I got into Survivor during COVID. Never watched anything before that. And I did kind of go down the like binging of Survivor, but continue.
Oh man, to me it's crazy that I went, they're coming up I think on the 47th season now, and that's what got us both into it, is we were watching season 40 46. but I just couldn't believe that it took me that long to finally watch this show. And I think the reason I have historically stayed away from it is I've just always felt like reality TV is just completely ridiculous. And I can say that we can talk about maybe if we have time for this story here, but I've actually been on a reality TV show before, and that's what gave me this sour taste. But I finally started watching Survivor for whatever reason. And I'm like, man, you can tell, yeah, they dramatize it, but this really is based on people giving it their all, trying to win. And so it's almost for me, it's almost like watching sports, which is one of the only few things that I can fathom watching is just sports. So we've been binging out on Survivor on, we're in Canada because fun fact, my wife's Canadian, so we live here in the Toronto area right now. But Paramount Plus is the app that you can watch Survivor on in Canada. Dude, we have been ripping through it. And so anytime, like when I finish up my workday. My daughter, the little one, is finally getting on somewhat of a consistent sleep schedule. So normally it works out where like she'll take a nap right when I finish up work. We'll entertain Micah in like the family area, throw Survivor on. Like we're both kind of subliminally watching it. Kids go to bed. And then once the kids are both in bed for like 2 hours, we'll continue to binge out on Survivor. And like we just love it. So it's to get back to what you're saying, like the time with your spouse. Those are the kind of the moments that I feel like both of us crave and strive for spending time together right now. And then yeah, once the kids are 5, 6, 7, then we can get back to like going out and like really doing something out together without the responsibilities of keep making sure two little ones stay alive.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's kind of what it looks like right now. And I'd say if she was here, she would agree. We're loving it.
Awesome, dude. I want to touch into, you have your hands in a couple things. You mentioned podcasting, music. Is that right?
Correct. Yep.
Obviously dadhood, still working in Raise Masters, of course. You're a whole person. Okay. You mentioned if you're too much in one thing, like there's probably a problem. Have you seen that throughout? I mean, because I definitely see you as a mover and a shaker, someone who's highly motivated. And I like hearing that you're watching Survivor because it makes me feel like you're a real person who's not like, no TV. Like there's too many things to be gained here. And specifically Survivor, like I've seen myself, like I've got to be on the show. Like this is
Dude, I could
exactly.
totally see you
No,
getting
I
on it.
would fail, dude. That's the thing. I like, because I thought to
Where do
myself,
you think
oh,
you?
the nice like servant, like helper, athlete, like they always get like
Well,
picked off like right away.
well, you know what a lot of people on the show say, and I'm sure you've seen this, is like they had a certain amount of people tell them that they should just apply and go on the show. That eventually they did it, and then they got on the show, and here they are. So we're recording this piece of content right now. So if Kenny Johnson is ever on Survivor, please, Jeff Probst, take this clip and please put it in the show to show that
Oh, that would
on
be awesome.
July 24th, 2024, when we recorded this, the seed was officially documented for Kenny to come on the show.
Adam, you're rekindling something that I had squashed out months ago, years ago. So I may have to apply
You
now.
see, you see how many like people that have like, I'm doing this for my kids. I'm doing this
Yes,
for my wife.
yes, yes, dude.
That's
Yes.
you, dude.
No, I've told myself if I'm on the show, like the line and I know that's like, oh, I'm not a good liar, holier than thou, but I would be really bad at lying.
You know what? I don't know if you remember this season. We've probably binge watched season like 32 through 37 lately, something like that.
Okay.
There's a guy who won around season 36, I think. His name is Wendell. And so far from watching the show, he's the one guy that I feel like truly played the cleanest game. I was like, wow, he just won with, I don't think he really lied to anyone.
Yeah.
And he just won.
Yeah.
I hadn't seen that in the other 6 seasons that I watched or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, let's get back to fatherhood.
All right.
All right. I really think it's engaging to find out the struggles, the trials, the obstacles. You go to church and everyone puts on their best outfit and you don't want to let anyone know you're struggling with things. And I feel like it's just so refreshing to find out that, hey, I messed up here, or tell us something that you've gone through that you've been like, man, this was not easy.
two things that come to mind. One that I feel like I've been through now, and I feel like anyone who does, for any dads that are listening that are new dads, soon to be dads, firstborn on the way. I remember with Micah, um, about the first year of him, being alive. I always felt this tremendous pressure to have to be there to support him and my wife in any way possible. And where I'm going with this is I realized once he could start like walking at about the 12-month mark and start moving around, I was like, dude, this is awesome. Like this is way more fun than the last 12 months. But I would have just like I didn't know that. And I look at my wife and the relationship she now has with my 4-month-old daughter, and I look back on it, I'm like, dude, in that first like especially 6 months, the baby is so dependent on mom that it's okay to like if you're a dad, it's okay to know that there's really nothing you can do right now. Because I kept feeling like, oh man, I got to do something because I'm the dad and I got to have this relationship. But um, now that I have the two and I do spend a lot more time with the oldest because of the dynamic, I realize like, man, I love my daughter, going to spend as much time as with her as I can right now, but it's okay to like just let my wife become besties with her. And then yeah, hey, once they're both running and walking around, we'll go do some fun stuff with dad.
Mhm.
And it was just a relief to see how it played out the second time because I had moments as a new dad where I just felt like I wasn't doing enough, but I don't know what to, it's like
Mhm.
Will Ferrell in
Mhm.
the Talladega Nights where he's like, I don't know what to do with my hands as he's being interviewed.
Yeah.
so so
You
that's
know,
that's go ahead.
oh no, I was just gonna say I read something recently of these memes always come around or some clip somewhere. But a lady was up there talking on stage and she said the child gets the most happiness when they are loved and nurtured by their mom, but they get more when they are playing with their dad. And I find that really interesting. Of course, I know there's different age dynamics for I'm sure this study, but that idea of like playing with your kids as dads is just like a drug to our kids in a natural drug that
I
makes
think it's
them happy.
mutual.
Yeah,
I think it's mutual.
no, they said that. They said that. They
Yeah.
said, and the dad also gets that when they play with their kids. So I just thought that was really cool. Just, the way we're designed, um, our genetics, our brains. I feel like God just did that so cool where, and you can read about it, and oh, dad, fatherhood, it's great. But like when you're feeling that and your kid's laughing and you're laughing with them, it's just the
Yeah.
best. It really is the best.
The laughs are 100% the best. And yeah, on that note, there's a myth. This is something that I saw on like a TikTok video or an Instagram reel. So I don't even know if it's how true it is, but like the person in the video seemed very confident. I think they backed it up by facts. I've been doing it now since I saw this video, and I'm like, okay, I think this is actually accurate, which is and you've probably seen or experienced this too. There's something that happens, I think, in the child's mind when they know it's almost time to go to bed, where they go, okay, it's time to get wild because might as well get wild now because it's time to go to bed. And there's a video that I saw, and it was like, hey, um, a lot of people think that it's bad to like rile up your kids and wrestle with them like right before bed. But what it actually does is, it does something chemically in their body where if you do play and wrestle with them before bed, and nothing wrong with reading a book before bed either, but if you do wrestle with them before they go to sleep, it actually helps them sleep better because of XYZ. I'll have to find the video, but I always make an effort to like wrestle with Micah for like 2 minutes before we go to bed now, ever since I saw that. And he hasn't really been waking up in the middle of the night. So I'm
Dude, you might have just saved so many parents out there with that nugget. That is awesome. My my son is very different than my daughter in regards to he's just gentle, loves to obey, kind, and Daphne's like the opposite. She's and just hard and but can be sweet. But she does this thing where we sing, "There she goes," and she runs in this circle, and it's like this crazy circle for like a minute until like I'm like she's gonna hurt herself, like she's gonna stumble, and we do that like right before she goes to bed. It does work. I think it works.
the routine as well. Yeah, the routine is super powerful. So, but you asked if there's anything I'm going through right now. Um, that could kind of just be used as an example. For everyone listening who's not familiar, Raise Fest is our annual conference that we do at raisingcapital.com and Raise Masters. I think we're going to do Phoenix again, February 2025. So I think if you just go to raisefest.com, you can like check out tickets and stuff. There you go. Get a little throw an advertisement in there. Raisefest.com. But anyways, so last year at Raise Fest, I'm up on stage with Hunter before day two, getting the crowd pumped up. We had, 1,000 attendees, if not more, jumping up and down on stage. And for the first time in my life, my leg just gives out and I go down in front of 1,000 people. I can't get up. And I've seen I'll have to send you the video. I hate watching it, honestly, but I'll send it to you. And you could see from Hunter's reaction, he thought that I was like joking. He's like laughing. He's like looking at me, and then he sees all of a sudden like, oh wow, Adam can't get up. And I did my thing. I fist pumped for like 30 seconds as I'm just sitting there. Like we're not quitting. But that was wild. And then my daughter was due 3 weeks after that happened. So it's like, all right, well, I ended up being able to walk again. I got crutches, all that. I got back from Phoenix to Canada, and everything was cool enough where it's like, all right, this is good enough to like help with a newborn. Because if I had to go get surgery, then it would have just been like, there's just no way helping with a newborn. And for about 2 months there, I mean, it was full steam ahead with newborn. You're moving around, you're everything. And then I realized over the past few months, I've kind of used having a newborn as a crutch or as a reason to not finally just go get this thing fixed. Like I need to get surgery. I've had MRI. I'm actually getting more x-rays this week just to confirm everything. But looking back on it, I probably could have maybe found the time somewhere a few months ago to do it. And I had a moment with Hunter's wife, actually, Chrissy. We just did an event about a month ago in Cancun, Mexico, and everyone's like dancing on the dance floor. I got my brace on. I'm like trying to move. She's like, "Are you like gonna get that fixed?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's just been tough with like newborn." She's like, "Yeah, but," she's like, you can. It's like if you keep saying that, you're probably just gonna keep saying that. I'm like, dang, Chrissy, I didn't say it. Like, I was like, she's right. Dude, she is right. I got to get this thing fixed because I
I
can't
love
come to
it.
another company event and Adam's still limping everywhere. So that's what we're doing right now is just finally wrapping this thing up. But that's something where the way I delivered it there gives someone some inspiration.
Having those people in your life who are like, dude, just do this. And you could be like, oh, she was being rude. I don't know. I really appreciate friends or even acquaintances who kind of give you a little more of the tough love. I, I don't know. You got to obviously analyze who you're talking to, but
Yeah,
if it's
no,
coming
exactly.
from a
Yeah,
heart of
yeah.
like, you need to do this for this reason. Thank you. And it did sound like it kind of resounded with
It
you
hit
pretty
hard.
good.
I won't
Yeah,
forget
you were
that.
like, shoot.
I got nothing to say to that. Right.
Well,
And ultimately, it'll help me be able to play with my kids better too, to tie it
absolutely.
back into what we're saying. Yeah.
Dude, we didn't talk about health, but health is so important. We got to be around with our kids.
Yeah.
Adam, we're wrapping up here. I always like to give a final takeaway. I know you have your own podcast. Share with our audience sort of how can they keep track with Adam Carswell.
Yeah, I would say number one best way would be to connect with me or follow me on LinkedIn. I've had different phases throughout my life where, I went dark on social media or quit social media entirely. Like I did have a moment where I didn't have anything, I think, for about a year and a half at least. But the person who gave me that wisdom to kind of just disappear for a little bit said, do all that, but don't delete your LinkedIn. Like you need that for business. And so because of that, I mean, it's paid off. I have a lot of connections on LinkedIn now, but that's just always been like the one I feel like best way to keep up with what I'm doing. I'm pretty active on there. I have my own podcast. You'll be able to find that through LinkedIn. You'll be able to find my music through LinkedIn. I write articles. So there we go. That's the best way.
Dude, love it. So that nugget was number one, follow him on LinkedIn. Number two, have a LinkedIn. And if you're gonna go dark, keep the LinkedIn.
Exactly.
Adam,
Yeah.
I thank you so much for your time today, brother. It was awesome. We got to know a lot more about you, and best of luck with your 2 under 2, and get that knee taken care of, or your leg.
Thank you for the tough love, Kenny. Yeah, you're just shout out to you and just want to say thank you for all the hard work you put into doing the show. I know what goes into producing a podcast. And I think on the surface level, a lot of people don't see like the effort that you're putting in. So just a huge thank you to you and all you're doing to serve your listeners and guests.
Thanks, brother. Take care, man. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Invested Fathers podcast. If you liked this episode, we would love for you to click subscribe and leave us a 5-star review. We appreciate all of your hard work as a father and look forward to our next episode together.